We can go.
All right. Call meeting to order. I just want to remind people, especially the MAC reps, because we've had some people bring this up before, for everyone to speak one at a time, and then we do have this device here called an owl. That if you speak into that and look at that, then the folks that are doing Zoom can hear and see us. And also, if you are gonna talk, if you're in the public, if you can step up this way some in front of the camera, then everyone out in Electronicville will be able to see and hear you. Ricardo, are you there?
Yes.
Ricardo's our interpreter. He wants to make a little announcement.
Buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos a la reunión de la Junta Municipal Asesora del Lower Russian River. Tenemos servicios de interpretación al español, servicios de interpretación simultánea. Si gustan de escuchar la reunión en español, en su pantalla de Zoom, en la barra inferior van a ver un icono de globo terráqueo que dice interpretación y ahí pueden seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia. Gracias. Y de igual manera, tenemos interpretación simultánea disponible en la sala. Si no tiene un dispositivo Zoom con el que participar en la reunión, póngase en contacto con Mía y les va a dar audífonos para que puedan escuchar la interpretación simultánea. Gracias.
Thank you. I also want to just remind everyone that this is a community meeting, it's a public meeting, and so we encourage everyone to speak in a respectful manner, no personal attacks. There will be time limits on folks, and I don't know if we have I know we have a timer, but I don't know what the noise is this time.
Sign.
It's a little time. Okay, we have a little sign, and so if that goes up, that means you have 30 seconds left. So if you adhere to your time, that's also great. So please, just cordial, respectful atmosphere, listen to all the information. Everyone has a right to their opinions, their comments, but let's do it in a respectful way, okay? All right, with that, let's go to the Pledge of Allegiance. Do I have someone that will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh, Michael goes. All right.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Thank you, Mike. Can we do a roll call, please?
Pitt Marquez de la Plata.
Here.
Okay, Mike Nickel,
Present.
Joe Roca,
Here.
Spencer is not here. Kathy is.
Oh, I thought I saw him.
Betsy Van Dyke. Here. Okay. Cynthia Strucker.
Here.
Vicky Clues.
Here.
Lonnie Lazar.
Here.
Kyle Hilton.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, approval of agenda. Does anyone want to move to approve the agenda or have any comments on the agenda?
So,
Second, raise a hand. Looks like everyone. Great, thank you. If anyone has a conflict with any item on the agenda that's on the council here, now's the time to make that known. Anybody? Nobody? Okay. Consent agenda, May 9th minutes. Everyone had a chance to review those? Anyone want to move to approve or make any comments on or corrections on the minutes from our last meeting? Do I have a second? Got a second? Raise your hands in favor. Aye. That's everyone. Okay. Now we're going to move to council member comments that are not on the agenda. So, and we're going to do that on the public as well in a second. But if there's an item that's not on the agenda that you want to, you have a comment about or an announcement about, now's the time to do that. We do ask that we keep these short to a minute or less. So we'll go to council members first. Mike.
I'd like to make some comments on the emergency awareness event at Gurnville Middle School on June 9th. This is not an agenda item. However, as one of the 14 or 15 presenters, I was extremely disappointed at the lack of turnout from the Lower Russian River community for the emergency awareness event. By count, there were more presenters tabling than attendees. Presenters spent hours in preparation, preparing handout documents, purchasing and inventorying swag, setting up demonstrations, spending 2 hours in a virtually empty room, all for naught. Many presenters drove out from Santa Rosa and from other communities along the 101 corridor. Advertising the event was minimal. The DeFi semi-monthly bulletin and a push out on Facebook just didn't effectively reach the community. I believe we need to continue the work of our community engagement to study and recommend more effective communication and engagement options for future county and MAC sponsored events. Obviously, the emergency awareness event was a massive failure. In closing, I strongly urge we agendize community outreach as a topic in an upcoming meeting. Thank you.
Great. Okay, if I can just add to what Mike was saying, I actually think that part of it was maybe the outreach, but the other part might be the structure of the meeting and the number of different topics. So people tend to, if it's a single topic, show up, or limited topics show up. So I just wouldn't want to put it on engagement part. There might be a content part that we think about as well.
I would welcome feedback from anybody who was there or wasn't there and has some ideas. You can reach out to me and we can take that into consideration for next year or next time.
Right.
I would really appreciate that.
Okay. Thanks, Debbie.
It would seem to me that it would make sense.
I think we probably
Yeah.
shouldn't
Sorry.
discuss
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
because it's not on the agenda, but I would welcome all of that
Okay.
feedback.
I just welcome that we urge that we agendize the item for a
Yeah.
future meeting.
Okay, Cynthia.
Just remind everyone that the Rio Fest, Monte Rio's, big show and tell is this Saturday from 12 to 6, I think it is. And there'll be music and food and games for the kids and every community group in the world and all that kind of stuff. So I say, be there or be square.
Thanks. Anyone else, council? All right, anyone in the room have any comments or that are not on the agenda or topics? Is Tracy on?
No, Tracy is not on. And would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. I see none.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move to Supervisor Hopkins with some updates.
All right, so, is that good for the owl? Am I okay? Or I feel like there needs to be like an X mark.
We usually do have an
All right, so the big news of the week, is that the Board of Supervisors has spent pretty much every day, all day in budget hearings, although, today was actually more closed session, but, and I think it's a really good budget. We did not have a lot of new ongoing revenue or one-time funding available, unlike in prior years when we had huge windfalls from the PG&E settlement, or huge windfalls from year-end savings. Just because we had lots of unfilled positions and we were sort of not being quite as scrupulous, frankly, in terms of sweeping departmental budgets and ensuring that, you know, they were sort of right-sized. So since we've done all that, that means that we don't have a lot of extra money at the end of the year, which is actually a good thing because it's sort of more fiscally responsible budgeting, because we're actually budgeting closer to our actuals. But a few of the highlights that we did and make some investments with some new one-time and ongoing dollars. It's kind of a little bit of a, you know, back to basics approach. So one thing that we invested in actually is that the sheriff's office has been having a challenging time kind of implementing new technology as it pertains to health communications. And so we actually provided some one-time funding as well as an ongoing analyst position that will help the sheriff's office sort of better oversee those systems and modernize them and bring them up to speed with new technology. Additionally, we did invest in ongoing dollars in a community development assistant manager for the Community Development Commission. It's actually really critical for projects like George's Hideaway and Elderberry Commons, because we just don't, right now we've got staff who are working many times 12 to 14-hour days and at high risk of burnout, and then also at risk of not actually completing these projects on time, which funding is often contingent upon, timely project delivery. And so that position will actually assist us with these special projects, of which we've got a couple in West County. And then we also did invest in a position with the Office of Equity for doing an analysis of all of our boards and commissions, of which you all are one. And so this is going to kind of take a look at all the different boards and commissions in the county to try to figure out sort of a couple things. Number one, best practices for recruitment of diverse pools of board members. Number two, are all the boards and commissions necessary? The Lower Russian River MAC is absolutely essential. Don't worry, it's not going anywhere. But apparently we have many, many dozens of these, many of which honestly the Board of Supervisors isn't even really quite aware of. So we're going to sort of also take a fresh look at what is relevant, is there any consolidation, and then how do we actually bring resources, say, to the Commission on Human Rights or the Commission on the Status of Women, who really haven't had adequate staffing to even kind of facilitate their activities, which they do actually both do a lot of youth mentorship and development, which is really, really critical in the community. And so that also comes with some dollars for a consultant to help analyze the boards and commissions, so that then the Office of Equity can kind of take an approach to supporting all of that. And actually, very exciting news, not from Herman J, but from Herman G, was delivered at the Board of Supervisors meeting, which is that Lucien actually received a substantial grant to sort of facilitate, again, encouraging diversity on boards and commissions, leadership development in the Latinx community. And so that will also be a really great partnership between the Office of Equity and Lucien. So now to the fun, exciting one-time funding stuff. The biggest one that I am excited about, well, aside from Carol, which I'll get to in a second, is the funding allocation for the regional county service centers. It's great that we bought the Bank of America building. It was great that we had a really fun ribbon cutting where everybody showed up and was excited about it. And then it's been pretty much closed except for West County Community Services. We do work out of there at our office, but right now we don't actually have anyone to sort of actually welcome folks in and provide, sort of navigation services. And so this will be a 2-year pilot program, $600,000 between both West County and East County. So that's $150,000 per, sort of district per year for 2 years, to sort of have a pilot and see if we can get some kind of a navigator to attract other services. We also have the possibility of partnering with local nonprofits, whether that could be potentially like legal aid or, trying to bring others along so that we create a little bit more of a resource center model, which was actually another thing that we funded. I supported funding a family resource center in Roanoke Park in the 3rd district, where they're currently serving, I think, 240 families with a variety of wraparound nonprofit supportive services. And so we're hoping to kind of, emulate that model a little bit, but really also incorporate, access to government services, eligibility, et cetera. So that was kind of the big win for West County. We also funded a position on elder advocacy that that had lost funding. And so we were trying to salvage that position because that's really, really critical. Also funded for $500,000 legal aid, which provides really critical tenant representation services. Also actually represents small landlords that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. And so those are really critical legal services for some of our most at-risk folks. And also the COAD, Community Organizations to Assist in Disasters, and the Promotoras. So this is kind of about getting both community health information out and being prepared for the next disaster. And let's see, other ones. We also did, drum roll please, fund Russian River Keeper for $125,000. It's been your amazing team and more. That was a speaker of a vote with me and James going hard and Susan Warren jumping on, and we all breathed a little bit easier after that was passed, because we were already thinking about, what is option B and C and D, like plan B, plan C, plan D, because we can't not have that critical service. So huge shout out to Carol. And I mean, the return on investment on that one is ridiculous. It is so affordable for the county. If we were to come in as government and try to effectuate these cleanups, A, we wouldn't do nearly as good of a job. We wouldn't be trusted by the unsheltered community that Carol works with. And B, it would probably cost 3 times as much. So I would say that you're a great deal and we love you and we want you to keep working for West County and the whole county at large. And so the other thing that we did fund, we kind of had a theme almost of these community resource centers, was an NAACP community center. So the first ever Black community service center that will be located in Santa Rosa in partnership with Health Action Together. And it's a really, really big step. NAACP provides critical services for the Black community, all volunteer casework management. They help everyone from sort of like a Ugandan refugee last year to families that are at risk of houselessness. And they're really providing all kinds of casework and management. And so that also, I feel like, is one of those things that's a good return on investment for government. For a small amount of money, there's so much trust and services being delivered. So that's the main update on that. I've got a couple other quick announcements and happy to answer any other questions about the budget. Oh, the other thing that was really exciting, I forgot to add, was we are also partnering with the Sheriff's Office on a narcotics unit. That is a huge cost. It is, over $1 million a year of ongoing funding. There are 3 active large drug rings in Sonoma County. And we just don't have adequate sheriff's office staffing and sort of, specific technical focus on that in order to actually go after these folks who are profiteering off of the backs of folks who are suffering from behavioral health challenges. And so we basically, we allocated over $4 million to the sheriff's office to extend the contract for inmate services with Solano County. However, because the sheriff's doing so well at upstaffing, he thinks that roughly 50% of that can go back into the narcotics unit as one-time funding. We also added an additional $1 million for contingencies. So even if we end up using all of that, sort of Solano County contract money on the Solano County contract, we still will have money available to kickstart that narcotics unit. And we're also looking at potentially bringing in some opioid settlement funds to that conversation as well. And then we'll figure out how to program that ongoing into the future. So that was the other sort of big budget decision, which I think is really, really important. We just have been completely understaffed in trying to address the flow of drugs and stuff like that.
Well,
Hey, back to basics. You texted me. I was like, I think that Eric's gonna like this vote and this effort. So I'm thinking of you. Anyway. Any questions on the budget before I jump into just other small updates?
On the narcotics thing,
Yes.
I know this is for next year's budget, so any idea of timing when that would start?
So that's actually a conversation actively between our CEO and the sheriff's office. And I was actually texting with some sheriff's office folks just over the past couple of days. They want to get started. They want to get going. And so my understanding is that right now we just need to come back to the board for formal allocation of the full-time employee positions. And then they'll actually go ahead and start to recruit. So we'll have them this year, which will, this year for us starts July 1st.
Is there any opposition on the board for this
No,
Okay.
I would say there was some less enthusiastic and more enthusiastic support. It ranged from, okay, to we really need to do this. So
Okay, that's awesome because it's really important to this community. And
I completely agree. And I was one of the enthusiastic supporters, just for the record.
Yeah. And then one other question that you didn't talk about, animal services. Asked for, I know there was discussion of facility funds and a couple other things, and I know that is critical. I work with them almost every day.
I was thinking about you during that budget, but that was actually a presentation on Monday before the budget hearing.
Okay, would you, do you know what the result of that was?
So essentially we are sort of gathering more information because we don't really have a good number. Apparently there was a number like thrown out there, $2 million, like right before budget hearings, which no one sort of knew exactly where that came from or didn't really have specifics. And so the CEO said, you need to do more analysis. So they will be coming back with further analysis, but there is an acknowledgement of the need to invest in that facility and a willingness to look at the deferred maintenance fund, I think, in order to do.
It's sorely needed.
Yeah.
Okay.
We actually had a similar situation with probation, which would have eliminated our ability potentially to fund like Riverkeeper and others. They were asking for $750,000 to facilitate consolidation into a different facility. And I tapped the deferred maintenance fund for that, which currently is set to by the end of this year have $85 million in it. So
Okay. Well, if you ever want to go over there, I'll go with you.
I would be happy to take a tour with you.
Okay.
I would love to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mike.
circling back on the narcotics issue, will we actually have a narcotics officer station here at the Gurnville substation?
That is a good question. I do not have any information on where the sheriff is planning on posting them, yet. But one thing that I do know, so the other thing that's happening with the sheriff's office that wasn't quite yet ready for prime time in budget, but which we also, that's one of the reasons we added an extra $1 million in contingencies, is standing up a parks division within the sheriff's office. This will be happening in conjunction with the shift of ranger status from a peace officer to a public officer, which there's been a lot of misinformation about. I'm happy to answer any questions. But long story short, the sheriff does expect to have an additional full-time deputy in West County as part of the parks division, once that is stood up. They're working right now on the memorandum of understanding between regional parks and the sheriff's office on that. So they would essentially be tasked with really focusing and being out in our regional parks. But the good thing is they would be, fully deputized, like sheriff's deputy, part of the dispatch system, they can respond anywhere. And so while that's kind of their top priority, they're available for mutual aid. And as you know, we have such long spaces between deputies in West County. Sometimes mutual aid is half an hour away in some situations. And so that will bring more folks, more deputies to rural areas.
Thank you.
Sorry, one other thing that I forgot to mention, which luckily I did not have on my notes, but Debbie had in hers, which was that we did also get $150,000 for unincorporated governance EIFD seed funding for the unincorporated governance ad hoc. So you're all ahead of the game in terms of that conversation. There's a lot of other communities in West County that are now interested in that. And this would also then augment the work that we did in the Lower Russian River to see if there is more work that needs to be done in terms of next steps.
Right, right. Anyone else on the council first that has any comments or questions? No? Anyone in the room?
I wonder what we're talking about.
Can you come up
Oh.
so that we
Animal
have
services. what
this
are
will
we
be
talking about?
The question was animal services. So if you wanted to expand on that.
Yeah, that facility has been there for
What's the name of it?
Sonoma County Animal Services.
It's part of the county Department of Public Health.
Yeah, it's out on Airport
airport.
Road, yeah.
All right, and then a couple more just super quick updates. June 29th at 10 a.m., which is a Saturday, Monterey Villa Grande Wastewater Solutions Pilot Project Community Meeting. Everybody, let's get ready to talk about septics and wastewater treatment, one of my favorite subjects. And then also wanted to mention on the lines of animal services, I did highlight at the board meeting what I've heard loud and clear from you, which is that we just have an inadequate access to spay and neuter services throughout Sonoma County. And the cost is staggering. And a lot of folks who, might not income qualify still can't afford $1,000 to have their dog spayed. And so I did want to highlight the Love Me Fix Me voucher program. We know that that needs to be expanded and has work to be done, but that does exist. And we also have a Silver Paws for Love program where adoption fees are waived for people 55 years and older who adopt a pet 6 years of age or older. I just wanted to mention that because we're experiencing nationwide a huge surge in sort of dogs, especially because everyone got a pandemic puppy, and then that sometimes they didn't get their pandemic puppy fixed, so their pandemic puppy had pandemic puppies, and now there's just lots more dogs that don't have homes right now.
And county also has a Mama Fix Me program. And because this situation is so tight right now, they can't actually handle the alterations.
Yeah.
So we're gonna take we're gonna take the cats so they can do more dogs. So it is a dire situation. Anyway.
And all the fosters are looking for more fosters, and we're a no-kill sort of community, but in the Central Valley, there are just beautiful young dogs being put to sleep every day. It's very, very tragic.
Yeah.
They tag them, rescue stuff. So, but he knows way more about cats, so don't ask me about cats.
Okay. Anyone in the audience have a question for Supervisor Hopkins? Or comment? Can you
My name's Smith and.
could you mind standing up
We
and
have,
coming
we have
back?
interpreters
I
online.
know the owl.
Yeah, so
Okay.
give me,
So,
there's
I
a
just-
mark right here.
It was, just kind of interesting that, when is the facility, the Bank of America building gonna be open to the public? We had you had a great open house, and I was surprised it's not open.
Yeah.
And that's been months ago.
Yeah.
I it's just like, I guess that's the way the system works, is you just have a nice party, and then you say, oh, okay, and then, oh, what, it's been 6 months, and there's nobody there to answer questions for people out here in West County.
Yeah.
So that was my,
Yep. So to repeat the question, in case people couldn't hear online, the question is, when will the Bank of America building open? And is this just how do things work? You have a party and then you never open the building. It's just to sort of summarize. And so I will say a couple of things. Number one, we had some unexpected things come up, like a massive leak in West County Community Services that forced them to relocate into where Human Services is going. So actually, everybody had to shift around in the building, and the government space was partially occupied by West County Community Services because there was a hole in their roof. Number two, it has been a bit like pulling teeth to try to get departments to commit to bringing their staff out here. And that was actually one of the reasons that we had the ribbon cutting, was to try to get them all there, try to get them to commit, to invest in this project. I have since been having conversations with the CEO about this, and she admitted that essentially there wasn't really anyone in her office who was the point person, trying to make sure that this happened. But that's also one of the reasons that I went back for the $600,000, because now that we have a budget allocation, now it's sort of in the CEO's court to move forward and to make sure that we have this open in the future. And I will say we are also actively, just with our office, because our office has kind of been doing everything, even though it really should be like the CEO directing department heads to do it. Also having conversations with other nonprofit organizations who could bring additional services. And in the meantime, we are holding community meetings and constituent meetings out there. And we have office staff there, several days a week. So I don't know if you want to add anything, Debbie.
The interpreters want you to move a little bit.
Oh, yeah,
closer.
okay.
We didn't put the X in the right.
And probably talk slower, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we can help, because it's so that I don't have to repeat, just for the interpreters, if you can come down, that would be awesome. Yeah, if you have a question.
Let's do that. Well, this is about the White Creek proposal.
You're
Is
fine
it-
right there,
am
as
I
long as you're
out-
close to
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
this-
That's good.
Am I out of place
But-
to bring this up now?
You just
speak
look
to
at,
the
look at the owl.
So I see that there's a proposal out and reading it, I understand what they're looking for, but I'm concerned about, it might be right, but is it environmentally sound? Do they have to do an environmental impact report? And where does the money come from for that?
So are you talking about the sort of Burnville Park and Ride
No.
area, or are you talking about sort of the Fight Creek Butterfly Garden that Vera works on?
It's a proposal that's out on flyers to dredge Pike Creek because they think it will stop flooding in town, and it hasn't been dredged in, I think they said 20 years, so I don't know. You haven't seen it then?
I have not seen the flyer, but I have worked very closely on sort of Fight Creek dredging and flooding issues over the last 8 years. And the section that runs along Armstrong Woods Road is actually actively maintained and dredged by Sonoma Water. That is sort of their top priority in this entire area, which we have a flood control district that raises a really small amount of money every year. Most of that money actually goes into the maintenance of Fight Creek. During this winter's storms, we actually had Sonoma Water and Department of Emergency Management out to actively remove debris from the creek because people were saying, oh, it's the debris that's causing it to back up. It turned out that was actually not the case. We did not find any major log jams, and we actually flew a drone over all of Fife Creek to sort of see if there were any major blockages. Anything that we identified was removed, but even after that work was done, we still had spillover onto Armstrong Woods Road. It was simply too much water at too short of a period of time.
So there's a flyer out
Okay.
asking
I will
people
look for the
to
flyer.
sign a proposal for it. Thank you all for.
Thank
listening.
you.
I will look for the flyer.
I think
Thank
that
you.
my X is in the wrong place.
Oh.
So maybe 2 steps closer.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All
All right,
right.
anyone else?
I like this though. Face it off with the owl.
That's their favorite spot, so.
Anyone else have a question or a comment?
One last clarification
Yep.
for the program that you mentioned for the staying and neutering. Could you tell me that a little tiny bit slower?
You probably know more than I do, but let me fix
It's
me.
called Let Me Fix Me, and you have to qualify as low income.
Okay,
You apply to Sonoma County Animal Services, you get a certificate for a spay neuter. The county subsidizes the payment. So for someone that's getting the certificate, it's a $50 charge, which is really, really, really good. And then there's really only two places in the county that will honor those certificates. It used to be vets everywhere and a whole bunch of places, but now it's just Forgotten Felines or Sonoma County Animal Services is doing the dogs because Sonoma Humane can no longer take on more alterations.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, they used to have those slots, but you used to have to sign up like as soon as it went up on them in order to fill it, yeah.
Just read that it was 50 for cats and 60 for dogs.
Yeah, that could be right.
Which is about $900 less than.
Believe me, I know.
Yeah.
Other questions? We're good? Anything
And
online?
is there anybody in our Zoom audience that would like to make a public comment? Raise your hand. I see none.
Great. Thank you Supervisor Hawkins. Okay, we are gonna move on to item 8 on the agenda, which is discussions regarding community concerns around law enforcement in the Lower Russian River. I know this topic has been talked about a lot by multiple folks in the community, so I'm very happy that we're gonna discuss it today. We have Director Alden here, I believe. Yes.
We just had.
Sorry, Debbie and I are having a quick chat.
Oh, okay. And he's gonna
So maybe if. I know. I'm running to some. How is the technology?
Sorry?
Camera, he's gonna say.
Oh,
All right. Okay, so we're gonna try to run some slides, but we're
Okay.
finding the Wi-Fi in this room, which has obviously, I know, it's the for sure out there,
It
right?
just might be if when
Is-
you're over here.
is this place run by the government?
Well, yeah. It's sporadically dropping the connection because it's saying the Wi-Fi is overloaded. So if anyone's on Wi-Fi that doesn't need it right this second, you can pop off. That might help us a little bit, but we'll give this a shot and see what happens.
No.
And that's probably. So we'll give it a shot and if.
Yeah, I also have those, not back there. I have the.
If the slides don't work, I'll just keep talking.
What?
We have your slides here.
No, it's just, there's gonna be light shining. We just want to sit so you can see the screen there. That's gonna get a little bit brighter. Yeah. So
Try.
it might be better. It just might be too far. This comes from the school.
What comes from that one?
Yeah,
So if the computer over there. But
but then you're not by the owl. But look at Mia and I are dropping. That's my point. Yeah.
would anyone like to do a song and dance? Sing song.
Karaoke now.
There we go.
All right, we'll give this a shot and if it. Wow, quite the lag. Okay. I'll have to remember to build in a 2 to 3 second lag when I hit the next slide.
Okay.
The slide actually show up. Okay, so my name is John Alden and I'm the director of ILARO, which is the Independent Office of Law Enforcement Review and Outreach. A couple things about the presentation before I get too far. I feel a little awkward standing right here, because my back with some of you, so I'm gonna try to turn around so you can see me.
Do you want to
But
put it
well-
up here? And face
Well,
that way?
is that picking up from the owl well enough? Because I know a lot of the interpreters were saying they couldn't hear us if we were over here or over there.
Or,
So I want to make sure people only. Well, you can hear me, but there's
people
ample
online.
notes from people online who say they can't hear anyone in the audience.
No, so
So
I think,
we're trying to
I
get
think
through
right,
the space
I right here is, I
You
think
think
right
right
there is
here?
good. I think if you went
You
up
think better
there, you would have the
Let's try
light
that.
in your eyes, because that's the projector,
Oh, I
that's
can
my
see
mic move.
or sit where I'm
That'll
sitting.
be- Okay. Let's test this real quick.
Okay.
See if we can see if it works. This works for me. Does it work for all of you? And how
All
about
right.
people online? Can the interpreter hear us okay? If I'm here? What does she say? She was having such a hard time earlier. I feel bad for her.
Okay.
He said yes.
Yeah.
All right, okay, it's a win.
All right.
Thank you for bearing with me. So again, my name is John Alden and I'm the director of ILARO. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Iolero. We've had some folks come by before, but it's been about a year. And I haven't personally been here before, so I'm glad that I can come by and chat with all of you. I'm going to try to build in some time for questions and answer. And if I take up too much of your time, let me know and I'll hop outside. That's my contact info. That is my direct line. Public servants don't always give you their direct line, but I do. So if you have these slides, you can call me anytime, email. And one of the things I'm going to talk about is not just our office generally, but what we've been doing the last year or so. A little bit about me, since I think many of you haven't met me before. I'm the supervisor, but the rest of you not so much. I am an attorney, and I got my start as a prosecutor. The first job I ever really had as a DA was here in Sonoma County. And I really wanted to get a permanent job in Sonoma County, but there's a competitive process for that. And somebody else beat me out. Now she's the DA, and I'm not bitter at all, but Carla did beat me out at a permanent job early. So I ended up being in Marin County for a while as a DA, and then also in San Francisco for a little bit. I was in private practice here in Sonoma County for a bit, so this is the third time I've had a job here in Sonoma County. I have been doing various kinds of oversight of law enforcement since 2009. I got started in San Francisco, working in the Internal Affairs Division of the San Francisco Police Department, and my job was to prosecute administrative cases against police officers that the city wanted to terminate or demote or suspend because they had done something inappropriate. So that was my first real taste of this, and since I'd been a prosecutor, I had some sense of how the criminal justice system worked, and I found I really enjoyed the work. In order to keep this work going, me and the other people in the office are active members of what we call NACOL, the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. We have an ordinance here in Sonoma County that requires that I get certification from NACOL. And I also make sure that everybody else in our office gets that same certification too, which takes several years of training. And we're also active with another group called the Association of Inspectors General. Why the Association of Inspectors General? Well, about 4 years ago, the state created a rule that said every county can have an inspector general that oversees things at the sheriff's office. So that's part of our process too in Sonoma County. Iolero is that inspector general in this county. And there's only 4 or 5 counties that even have such a system right now. So in that regard, Sonoma County is way ahead of the curve compared. I started here in September 2022, actually, that slide. This is a little bit about. All right, my slide switched. Now see lots of slides. Sorry about that. So for those of you who have the packet, or if you're online, you can see the agenda packet. You can look at the slides. This next slide is about NACOL, the National Association of Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. That link works there. I recommend that you check it out. They talk about why it is that civilian oversight they think works, and they have a whole series of recommendations they make about how one ought to do oversight, and we have a bunch of those qualities here in Sonoma County. One of them is that we have an independent office. So Iolero is part of the sheriff's office. We're not part of the DA's office. We're not part of county council. We're a whole separate county agency. We do answer to the board of supervisors like all the other county agencies do, except for the ones that are independent elected. But that independence is a really important part of how we do our work. We also are community driven. We have a community advisory council that's part of our process. There are 11 members of that council, 2 from every supervisorial district, and one that's appointed by the director of the Iolero. So they provide feedback about how it is that the sheriff's office might better meet community needs and expectations. So we try to have a lot of conversation with all of you out in the community about what we'd like to see from the sheriff's office, how we can do a better job of creating communication with the sheriff's office to do that. And that's part of the reason that I'm here tonight. We try to not only tell you about what we're up to, but get input from everybody in the community about what they'd like to see. So I would be especially curious, if we have time for Q&A, hear from you about pros, cons, things that are going well with the sheriff's office from your perspective, things that are not going well, or things that just could be better or different, or maybe could be changed in some way that's unique to this part of the county. Another thing about civilian oversight that tends to work best is when it's individualized. That is, it's really crafted to meet the needs of the community that it's from. And here in Sonoma County, we have that because Iolero got started many years ago after the death of Amy Lopez, which I'm sure you all can remember. And after that, we had something called the IA Task Force. It was a set of community folks who came together at the direction of the Board of Supervisors to put together recommendations about how this process will work. We're also governed in part by Measure P, which you might remember from 2020. So that was a process that came through community, went to the Board of Supervisors, the board and community put that measure onto the ballot in 2020. It passed with a really strong vote, about 2/3 of voters voted in favor of it. And it set some guidelines for us at Iolero about how we're supposed to work, what we're supposed to do. So I like that we have all of those core strengths. One of the things that I would particularly like to talk to you about tonight are ways in which we're trying to continue that conversation through a survey that we're doing. I'll talk about that at the very end of the presentation. So one of the things that we're working on this year through the Community Advisory Council is trying to engage all of you in the public around a couple specific issues. One is the Community Advisory Council, again, based on grassroots input, thought that it'd be really important this year to work on RIPA. Has anybody heard of that? It's so obscure, it's the fair.
Can you
Right,
say it louder, please?
RIPA. Let me tell you a little bit about what that is, because I think this is an important issue and deserves a little bit digging in. There's a state law unique to California. I don't know of any other state that's doing this yet, called the Racial and Identity Profiling Act. And the purpose of it is to collect data statewide across all law enforcement agencies about who it is that law enforcement thinks they're either pulling over in a traffic stop or detaining in an investigation or arresting or otherwise stopping or detaining in some way. And the idea here is to figure out, are there ways in which the population of people who are having those kinds of encounters with law enforcement are disproportionately affected by race or by gender or by age or any other demographic characteristic. And what we have seen across the entire state as a result of this project over the last few years is that it is true that disproportionately Black and Latino members of the state are stopped in traffic stops or detained or arrested in numbers that are vastly disproportionate to the population of those two groups of people throughout the entire state. And not only do we see it in the state as a whole, but we see the same disparity in almost every community in California. Remarkably, almost every community, when we drill down to that level, shows these dramatic disparities, and we have those here in Sonoma County too. The data for Sonoma County law enforcement agencies has only just started being available in the last year. There's roughly 1.5 years of data on this topic that's now available through the state of California's Department of Justice. And again, it's this RIPA, Racial and Identity Profiling Act project that makes that available to us. So, here in Sonoma County, we see across multiple agencies, the sheriff's office and many others, that folks who are Latino are much more likely to be the subject of a law enforcement stop than people who are white or Asian. And for people who are Black, they're 3 or 4 times as likely as any other group to be the subject of a stop. I don't think that anyone has good data that proves any particular theory about why that is. But what we do absolutely know is that's what's happening. And I don't think that's a situation anybody likes or finds acceptable. So one of the things we're trying to do at the Community Advisory Council is dig into why that might be, how we can become better educated about why that happens, how we can figure out some solutions to try to change those inequities. So that's one thing that the Community Advisory Council will be doing this year. They've also been working on the way in which evictions happen. Now, sheriff's offices don't have any ability to control who ends up being evicted in California. But if someone runs into a problem with a landlord, or they're not able to pay their rent, and they get evicted through the courts, it's the sheriff that's responsible for actually making that happen. You have to show up at the home and tell the person they've been evicted. They're the ones that post a notice in the home in case the person's not there. They're the ones that have to show up and help the person out of the unit if they haven't gotten out time that the eviction notice tells them to get out. And so one of the things that the Community Advisory Council wanted to look at was, well, are there ways we can use that moment to help provide other services, to connect a person to other needs they might have at the time that they're evicted? How can we make sure they're not just becoming homeless at that moment? And there are some counties that at least have ways in which sheriff's deputies, when they have to arrive on a sad day, when that happens. How can we use that moment to connect, people as they do in some other counties to some of the other services we have here in some of the counties? We've also been working with the sheriff's office on recruitment and retention. And I think the sheriff's office has actually done a really good job over the last year of recruiting and retaining more deputies than ever before. In particular, I wanted to give some credit to the sheriff for taking up an idea that a number of people have advanced, which was the state of California changed some of the rules for who can be a deputy or police officer a couple of years ago. And the basic change was you didn't have to be a citizen of the United States. You just had to be someone who would work in the United States lawfully. And that opened up that job to a number of people who wouldn't have been eligible before. And as you might imagine, if you look at the set of people who are eligible to work in the US that are not citizens, disproportionately, those are people who have some pretty strong language skills. Often that's sort of the sweet spot for finding people who are bilingual or are culturally fluent in ways that are really useful in law enforcement. And so what we've seen in a lot of other agencies is when they followed suit with the state's change in that regard, then they started seeing a much more diverse workforce. And I want to give, again, Sheriff Engren some credit for having taken advantage of that and recruiting a more diverse set of people now to work in jail in particular, where that kind of cultural fluency and the language skills are especially important. So we're starting to see now, more diverse pool of people working for the sheriff's office. We're also continuing to work on the way that the sheriff's office uses police dogs or canine units, as they say. Our concern there came from a set of cases that we audited at ILR, meaning we took a look at what happened when dogs were actually used to apprehend people by biting them. And we found, while there aren't very many instances in which that happens, we found that in the ones we could find consistently, the dogs were being used to bite too fast, too soon, at moments that the law wouldn't generally allow. And we have been encouraging the sheriff's office to rework the policies around how they use canines and retrain canine handlers so that there's a little more time, a little more distance, and so that that program is in better compliance with the law. They did change their policies last year. They're training to a new policy this year, and they continue to be in conversation with us about how they're doing that. So crossing my fingers. We will continue to see a canine program at the sheriff's office, but one that is more legally compliant than before, and that is less likely to result in serious injuries through bites, but just as useful for fighting crime as it was before. So those are some of the things that we've been working on, and I'd be curious to hear from some of you about other things that you think the CAC or IRM. That's stuff that we're doing through the community-driven Community Advisory Council. There's another side to the work, which is that myself and some other lawyers that work at ILRO are looking in really close detail at cases that come to the sheriff's office. These are cases where someone has alleged that a deputy or someone else at the sheriff's office has done something wrong or incorrect. And where the sheriff's office then does an internal personnel investigation to see if the deputy failed to follow policy or failed to follow an order, and then figure out if that is the case, whether some kind of discipline is involved. Or whether the situation tells us there's a problem with the policy, it's not working the way it should, it needs improvement, kind of like the canine cases I've mentioned. So we have, ever since 2016, been doing audits of a select set of cases that go through internal affairs. After Measure P in 2020, the kinds of cases that we did in that regard tremendously expanded. And so a couple of years ago, it kind of caught up on the audits, but with Measure P and then the increased number of complaints that we're getting in, the number of cases that we're working on has really significantly increased. We've also started doing direct investigations where we're not double checking internal affairs work, but we're actually going out and interviewing sheriff's deputies and taking a direct look at source evidence like video and police reports and physical evidence in a very small number of cases where that Measure P says are of high importance. And those tend to include cases where somebody died. That might be someone who died while they were in jail. Somebody who died during a pursuit by sheriff's deputies in a vehicle. Somebody who died while they're in the custody of a sheriff's deputy, like in a car, in a sheriff's car. Or someone who died while sheriffs were using force, like in a shooting, for example, a deputy-involved shooting. We'll start being able to release some public reports about those over the next year. And in those cases, we'll have our own opinion that may be the same as or maybe different from the sheriff's office about what we think happened in those cases. For those of you who can see the slides, there's a slide that's got a bar chart on it. And I love that our staff came up with this bar chart and folks at the county administrator helped too. Basically, this is giving you a sense of how much of this kind of auditing work that we have been doing. The yellow or gold bars are the number of audits we've completed year over year. The last line there for the current fiscal year is only through the first 3 quarters of the year. We're coming close to the end of the year. By the end of the year, I think that gold bar is going to be the biggest one we've ever had. History of Iolero, more cases completed than ever before. But that said, you notice the gray bars? Those are the ones that say how many pending cases we still have that year. And this year, that's also going to be a record. In part, that's because you see that blue line there? That talks about the number of complaints that we got in any given year. Last year, the number of complaints that we got, which then triggered internal affairs investigations that we need to audit, just skyrocketed. No one's sure why. There's no particular pattern in those cases. They're not about any particular event or set of events. They're of the same sorts of complaints or topics of complaints we've got in the past, just more of them. So I couldn't really explain why that is, but the fact of the matter is we have a much larger workload. And I was really gratified that the board earlier this week, as they were doing budget deliberations, approved Iolero expanding our staff a little bit so we can do a better job of cranking through these cases and then getting information back to you about what was happening in some of those. Of course, the official vote's tomorrow morning, but I don't think anything's going to change between now and tomorrow morning. It should be all done.
Was there any kind of public information campaign that made more people more aware of Iolero?
Well, we did do more outreach that year than we had before. In part, that was because we had more staff. That was the period of time where I came on board. We had a new outreach manager who came on board, Lisa Camacho, who did a great job of getting us out to a lot of public events and spreading the word out about us. But that said, of the people who complained, not many of them said that they had run into us at one of those outreach events. So that might have had some effect indirectly, just by getting us known a little more. One of our staffers mentioned that who'd been there the longest said she noticed that whenever we got a new director, there seemed to be an increase in complaints. And maybe that's just because the new director tends to create a little bit more press around it. And if you look back a couple of years there to fiscal year 1920, there was a new director who came in just before that, and the complaints went up a little bit then, but that was not nearly as big a jump as the most recent one. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Yes, there's a question.
I was just curious, how do people complain? Did that change? Did the way people complain change all of a sudden?
That's a great question. That might have a little bit to do with it.
If it's an easier app or phone number or social media application, all that will change.
Yeah, you know, we do have
Yeah,
a website at which people can complain. And it may be that just became more known because the number of people who complained through that portal went up. Not enough to account for all of this, but it was a factor. That website's been around for a long time. So it had been in place for several years before this spike. but maybe somehow people became more aware of it. That could be. Time check?
Can we, well, hold on, can we just hold questions and comments until after we're done and then we'll. Thank you, Marcy.
Sometimes people ask us about our funding. So one of the things that I appreciated about Measure P, that measure from 2020, is that it creates a rule that ILARO is supposed to have funding that is the equivalent of, not from, but the equivalent of 1% of the sheriff's office budget. So whenever, the sheriff's office has a budget request that gets approved, I kind of smile. Actually, one of the things I really like about that is it's consistent funding for us. It makes for we can tell our staff, look, the funding for this agency is going to be fairly consistent from year to year, and that makes it much easier for us to retain and recruit staff. And a lot of other agencies like ours, the funding can be really volatile from one year to the next. And so staff tend to leave when they see that happening, or people just don't apply. So our staffing has been remarkably consistent over the last 2 years, and I think that's probably part of why. We also have had the good fortune to be able to fill our positions quickly. So when we get new positions, there's a lot of interest, and we're able to hire some really quality folks. We have one new position that we're going to be recruiting for over the next year, and I'm really looking forward to getting that filled. So last thing, because I know you have a lot of other stuff on your agenda, but I want to talk to you a little bit about something we've been working on now for a while called a community-oriented policing study. Community-oriented policing is a little bit of a slippery term in law enforcement. It can mean a lot of different things, but the core idea is instead of having law enforcement officers just driving around in a car from one call for service to another call for service, we want to try to get those law enforcement officers out of the cars and talking to community and building relationship with all of you to understand better what the needs of the community are, to have a closer relationship with people in the community that they police, so that they're not just the person who shows up to make an arrest, but the person that one actually has some relationship with. There are a lot of different ways to do that. And so one of the things that one of my predecessors at ILARO thought of was, well, why don't we partner with Sonoma State University to do a study in Sonoma County of what community-oriented policing means to the people who live there. What is it that folks like you all would like to see from your sheriff's office to develop better connection with you in between those 911 calls? And so we're at a stage where we do have a professor and her staff and some contractors through Sonoma State that are working on this project. They are currently doing some small group conversations targeted to different parts of the county and different populations in the county so that they can then do a fuller survey. And we at ILARO have asked them to particularly focus on communities that have a significant population and receive their policing services primarily from the sheriff's office. Does that sound familiar to you? Right, yeah, okay. So I've been saying to them over and over again, you have to get out to the lower Russian River and you have to talk to folks in Guerneville. That needs to be one of our target audiences. Likewise, the folks along Highway 12, just north of Sonoma, like in the Hot Springs area, right?
They just had a meeting here last night.
Good, excellent. So I would say to you, if you're interested in learning more about that project, I'd be happy to talk to you more about it after the meeting, or give me a ring or email. I anticipate you will be seeing a survey coming out probably in a few months, maybe in the fall or so, surveying people, particularly here in this community, about what community-oriented policing would look like to you, what you'd like to see.
How will that survey be pushed out?
Hold to the end, sorry.
So I'm gonna be good at instructions.
Remember that.
Okay, so our next steps are, we're gonna finish up that community-oriented policing study, get into the survey phase, hopefully get some information back to the sheriff's office about what the community has to say. We're going to continue working on some of the newer programs that I was talking about earlier, like the direct investigations of deaths. We have a new staffer we're bringing on, and then we're going to keep working with the sheriff's office through the community advisory council on these policy issues I talked about. So lots going on for the agency. I appreciate your time. I have time for questions.
Great.
You all have time.
Yeah,
for
we,
questions. I'm
I
happy
think
to
there
take
are probably some questions.
them. Okay, I'm gonna defer to the chair about how we.
How will the
We're gonna go to
survey
the
be
council
pushed out?
Yeah, okay, so, the survey is gonna be pushed out through a variety of means. They're going to be using email, there's going to be links that you can use to get to the survey. And then they're also going to have folks at the grassroots level distributing the survey on, one-on-one basis, so trying to get out to people in communities that maybe aren't as connected electronically and need that face-to-face to have a conversation.
Well, I think we'd like to help with that if we can.
Okay, great,
We've encouraged QR code, so I'll read material.
okay.
This is kind of a follow-on, to that question. Is the survey asking what is, questions that are related to what does community policing look like to you? Or does it also try to get at the issues that people are feeling, why they need something like that? Right, so,
Well, it's not finalized yet, so I can't promise exactly what the questions will be.
Right.
And I wanted to defer to the academics of
Yeah.
the state, we're trying to craft it carefully, but my understanding is both.
okay, great.
And from my perspective, when we're having a conversation about community policing, some of that's about how does the community want to be treated, right? Like what's a respectful way to treat community when a deputy or a police officer is encountering community, but also what are the services that the community needs? What are the policing challenges in that community? Where would they like to see attention focused? Is that more on responses to 911 calls? Or is that a proactive patrol in a certain part of town? We were talking earlier tonight about a narcotics unit that the board of supervisors has now funded, and I think there's been ample feedback from the community that that's a real priority, particularly here. And so that's a good example of, from my perspective, community-oriented policing. That's a response to community demand.
Okay, before, we're gonna see it, council first, we'll get to you, Max, promise.
I'm just wondering if perhaps the increase in complaints had to do with the election of a new sheriff. Which happened
That's an interesting question. I hadn't thought about that, but it did happen around the same time.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of publicity in a new sheriff.
That's a good point.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Yeah.
I'm-
That could totally be it.
I'm not sure where this lands with you,
Okay.
but I can tell you in my community, which is Hacienda, Floresville area, the issue of unhoused and how that affects crime or perceived crime or whatever, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you're gonna hear from our communities about.
Yeah, and just in the course of getting out and about and doing outreach and engagement events like this, I hear that a lot from a lot of parts of the county.
And they are a community that should be listened to as well. So
Yeah.
some interaction there.
Yeah, I think that's a real challenge. A closely related one that I've heard a lot about is how we as a county as a whole provide mental health services. And a discussion we were all having at the county level not long ago, a year plus ago, was about how best to provide emergency or immediate services. When someone calls 911, it says, hey, there's someone who needs mental health services right now. How is that call responded to? And one of the things the county is now doing is moving, the whole state's doing this, and moving to an initial response that's not a law enforcement response, but a clinician response. So if somebody shows up who has training in how to provide mental health services, at least initially, there's no other sign of violence or danger, right? Some of the local incorporated parts of the county have been doing that for a while, like City of Santa Rosa, City of Pelham, and others. And now there's a county model we're starting to launch that's going to do the same thing in unincorporated areas. So you might start seeing in the near future, if someone has calls about someone who's in mental health crisis, a response that's coming from the county, but that's not a deputy sheriff.
Well, we've been looking at the care court issue as well. And I'd be curious in a year to talk to you all about how that might impact what's happening.
Yeah, I think everyone's really curious to see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fingers crossed, right? But it is,
Yeah.
it's a brand new thing statewide and we're all hoping it's gonna go well, but yeah. Let's keep an eye.
Anyone else on the council?
Right here.
Oh, well, I can't see him, Mike, sorry.
I think really we need to convince Sonoma County of what work is being done. It's been a long haul slog. And for a lot of us, it seems like it's long overdue. But when you compare it to what I read in the Washington Post this morning regarding internal investigations failing in other communities, we've come a long way. So if you haven't seen the Washington Post this week, read it. The articles will curl your hair about what's going on in South Bend, Indiana.
Yeah, I bet. And you know, I also want to throw out there, since you're mentioning some phrase, one of the things the sheriff's office did about a year ago that I think was very smart was inside their internal affairs division, they now have not just sergeants, that's sort of a mid-level supervisor, that will investigating the IA cases, right, who have been from patrol, but also sergeants who used to work in the jail. Right. So if there's a complaint from the jail, which is its own unique environment with specialized rules, they have someone who's been in there and knows that field well to investigate those cases. And sergeants who have been out on patrol, being able to investigate those. And I've seen a real substantial increase in the quality of the work that's coming out of IA around the jail complaints. Much better than it used to be.
Kai,
Not a question, it's a comment. You had mentioned earlier, the connection between the sheriff's department and evictions. I just note that there is a pilot project for homelessness prevention. That's a partnership between the city of Petaluma, the city of Santa Rosa, and the county of Sonoma that will be rolled out soonish. And that might be an opportunity to make connections with vulnerable populations, since they're gonna be interfacing with vulnerable people who are being evicted. So just a thought to keep in mind.
Good to know, thank you.
any other council member?
Can I ask one more?
Yeah,
So I wonder about the complaints that you receive. What's the percentage that comes from the street, the communities, and from the jail? Because I was just recently reading about the hunger strikes going on at the jail. And can they come directly from, can complaints come from
The
the
jail.
incarcerated?
Yes, so we do get complaints directly from the jail. I would estimate that's about a third of our workload. And the other 2/3 are from events that occur out in the field. And,
so that's disproportionate in terms of the whole population, or do we have that many people in jail?
say that, but you know, on the other hand, if you're in jail, you're in contact with
Yeah.
sheriff's deputies all day, every
Got
day,
it. Okay.
24/7, right? And if you're living outside of the jail, then you might only encounter them sporadically. So,
That
yeah,
makes sense.
it's an interesting question,
Yeah.
but you know,
Well, apparently
I don't
it
think it's a negative.
has to do with the complaints coming from the jail, or the press that's coming out of the jail has to do with understaffing more than anything else.
I agree. A number of the complaints that we get ultimately can be traced back to understaffing last year and the year before. And the sheriff's office has been working really hard to increase staffing at the jail. They have several things that they've done to try to alleviate the problems caused by low staffing, including a contract with Solano County to have some people go to the jailhouse there for short periods of time to alleviate the understaffing at our jail. This is a really obscure detail, and it might not sound important initially. It's huge in inside county employment. There are two totally separate job classifications for deputies who work in the jail and deputies who work out in the field. It's a totally different job. If you're hired for one, you can't do the other. The training's different, right? So, that's not true in all counties, but that's how we've done it here for a really long time. And it has its advantages and disadvantages. So an advantage is people become very specialized. So the people who are in the jail are going to be there for probably most of their career and learn that job really well, right? In some other jurisdictions, you see sheriff's deputies have been out in the field, get rotated into the jail for 6 months. And they're as confused and disoriented as any of you would be in a new job, right? And then maybe they don't do as well and they're back out in the field again. So it has that advantage, but a disadvantage is it's a little less flexible. So to his credit, the sheriff went to the deputies who work in the field and asked them, hey, look, I know it's not your job class, but I need an exception for a while. I need some of you to come work over in the jail, at least for a while we try to get the short staffing resolved. We did some extra training, some extra incentives to make that happen. And to their credit, the folks in that bargaining unit, that association said, yeah, okay, we'll do some. And a number of folks who were in that unit, including the head of that employee association or union, came over and did some work in the jail for a while. So again, I know that might not sound like a big deal to everybody here, but inside a government agency, that's a really big deal. And the fact that the sheriff was able to make that happen, even tried to make that happen, and the fact that some of these associations are willing to try that for a while, was, I thought, a real positive. So there are a number of things like that that they don't work hard on to try to increase that staffing in the jail. And I do think that that's going to reduce the number of complaints we get from the jail, because they're disproportionately about that issue, or things that stem from that issue, like not being able to get out of the cell and we're not having enough programming, those kinds of issues that are important, but we need staff to fix those problems.
Is there a benefit to the organization Santa Clara County has separating corrections officers from field officers?
Well, that's-
Departments.
We don't have two separate departments here.
So they have
Napa
two separate
County has
departments
something
there.
kind of like that too, right? And you know, that's a very complicated question. I don't know that I have an opinion about that, because it's not done much in California. Sorry, that's.
Okay, we're gonna move to folks in the audience. Mags, I know you had your hand up.
I'm not sure if I remember my. I was wondering if there was,
Hey,
any
Debbie,
oversight.
can-
Sorry.
I was wondering if there was going to be any oversight with your organization when sheriff's office is working with more unincorporated Lower Russian River area on how to police this area?
Do you want me to wait for all the questions?
No,
We-
you can,
One at a time.
Yeah, I had given him advance. You don't want to do it that way with all the public comment and then all of the response.
I think we can I get an idea of how many people have questions or comments here? But 1, 2, let's take them one by one then. Mags?
I heard you.
I was wondering if you could tell me, because there's such a difference between unincorporated and incorporated towns, how you will be giving oversight to working with the sheriff's office and how they police unincorporated areas.
Right. I'm gonna guess people online probably couldn't hear that. So I'll repeat it, if that's all right. Is it okay with you if I repeat it, or do you?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if I followed the question right, it was, how would ILRO continue to work with the sheriff's office to double check how the work is going, patrolling areas that are unincorporated like this one? Right. That's a great question. We, when we're dealing with complaints about sheriff's deputies on patrol, those are almost always in unincorporated areas, because we don't do any kind of oversight of ILRO over, say, the Santa Rosa Police Department inside the city limits of Santa Rosa, or the Petaluma Police Department, or Cotati, Roanoke Park, Cloverdale, etc. Like those incorporated areas have their own police agencies. They've all experimented with a little bit of some kind of oversight of their own, but none of them are under ILRO's reach or jurisdiction. So we will continue to do what we've done in the past, which is basically two prongs. One is we take complaints from people in those unincorporated areas if they have a concern about something specific that happened. You know, a time they encountered a deputy, or a time a deputy didn't show up and they were upset about that, they can complain to us at ILRO, and we'll get an investigation started at Internal Affairs, audit it, and get a response back to you. And incorporate that into some of our thinking about policy recommendations for the sheriff. Then the second main way that we do it is the Community Advisory Council gets input from different parts of the community about what's important to them, and then makes policy recommendations to the sheriff about that. So with the community-oriented policing study, if that has some recommendations about how folks in the Lower Russian River, or in the Hot Springs in particular, would like to see policing done differently in those communities, that'll be a publicly available report that we can give to the sheriff. It'll be up to the sheriff to decide whether to adopt some of those ideas or not. And then people can get in touch with the sheriff and tell the sheriff, I think I like this idea, or, you know, I saw that, but I have a different opinion than what came out in that survey. And he'll have to figure out which of those he wants to adopt.
So I guess a part B to that is then, if there's no contract in place, how do you hold that responsibility to them. So say response time. We complain, there's not a good response time. How do you hold the sheriff's department responsible for that?
Okay, so the question, if I followed right, was what happens when the performance from the sheriff's office is not what the community wants? How is the sheriff's office held accountable in that regard? So in an area, like yours, if you're not happy with the service that you're getting from the sheriff's office, again, in a particular instance, you can complain to ILARO. The sheriff can take all that input from ILARO, and hopefully if he's getting negative feedback from a community like yours consistently, use that to try to figure out how the service could be better. And in addition to that, there's always, for lack of a better term, the court of public opinion, right? Like what happens when the sheriff goes to, comes here to the MAC, for example, and chats with you? What feedback does he get? You might give him feedback that you really like one project that he's implemented in the Lower Russian River, but maybe you have a concern about another that's not going so well. And that conversation is something that the sheriff, as an independently elected official, needs to take into account as he figures out how to allocate resources and set policy. So what we can do at ILARO is amplify the public voice, show patterns where patterns occur, make sure that the work is being double checked, with rigor and independence, and provide that feedback to you all. But then there's also a part of this equation where the public has to get back to the sheriff or anyone else who's an elected official and let them know how they'd like to do work differently. So that's in part up to you. And I hope that to the extent that we at ILARO are passing on public feedback, that we're getting your voice right.
Great.
Yeah.
I know you had a question. Can you come up? Sorry.
I have a couple of comments. One is.
Can you come up to the, I'm sorry, but people in the.
I've been there. Yeah, I know that. Okay, so I have a couple of comments. One would be, I'm thinking that when you talk about policing and you want to get more involved, we just need more officers out here, okay? But the other thing is we need to get the officers to open up a little bit in a way of when they walk down to the burrito truck for lunch, and they scurry down there and they stand there and look at everybody and everybody else
Looks at them.
They do not say a word to anybody. Okay? And no, I'm kind of a person that would say, hi, how's it going today? But those are the things that I want to see, is just saying hi to the community involved. Are you visiting us, or, there's visitors all over the place, and that's the comment I have. But you're not gonna get that because we don't have enough deputies out here. And that goes back to the young lady over there that has some money that she has to get from everybody to get more policing out here. And it is a long response times for everybody. Cadero, there, Fort Ross, so it is that way. So maybe my comment.
Thank you.
I'm on pretty good terms with Linda and with Eddie Ingram. My son is one of the new deputy hires. Well, don't congratulate me, but thank you. What is issue here, community policing is a wonderful idea, but the substation here in town is supposed to have 22 to 24 deputies. We have 12. That includes the sergeants. So until, and this is not, I had a long talk with Eddie here a couple of months ago prior to meeting with Linda. Until he has the funding to put the deputies in place that we need, community policing is a pipe dream. It's just that simple. Now, the other thing is I want you to consider, my cousin Robert is a retired Portland police sergeant, so you can imagine some of the things he's had to witness in the last few years. That being said, 90% of what these guys are seeing on the street is a negative encounter. My son recently called my wife just to say, Mom, I love you, because he had to respond to a call where they had to tell an adult child that his mother passed away. So that really shook him. So I want you to think about that, especially when the fact that half the population hates the people they're putting on the badge. Okay, because of what's coming out of the media. So when you're commenting that they're not approachable, they're not friendly, that's crap. Okay, if you stop these deputies on the street, they're gonna talk. They're all pretty good people and they are people. Okay, so, and they do a very difficult job, but until we have the staffing here that we had in the sixties and the seventies, that I haven't seen since the budget. The sheriff's department budget was slashed in the 2011, 2012 budget year. Am I wrong, Linda? Hasn't recovered. So to the largest extent. So until we have those deputies in the substation and this zone that they cover is the largest zone in the county, bar none. So they got a long way to go. So be patient, be tolerant, be respectful of the deputies here in town. They're working their tails off.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the room here? What about online?
We do have one hand raised online, and if there's anybody else online who would like to public comment, please raise your hand now. I have unmuted. Oh, there we go. Dory, you can unmute yourself and make your comment. You're still muted. Dory, we can't hear you. Maybe her hand was up by mistake and she lowered it. Okay. I see no hands now. If there's anybody else online who would like to make a public comment, please do so now. There's no online.
No. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We have cards in the back. You're welcome to take those, some brochures and also some past annual reports, which is good. So,
All right, thank you.
thanks.
I'm sorry about that. Yes, you did great.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next item. We're gonna, which is discussion around the history and intending of the year-round pride flag, raising at the Guerneville Plaza, and we have Beth Streets, who's gonna give us a little history of the flag and.
Is that really?
You know what,
No, you-
that's just too far.
Yeah,
away.
yeah,
Yeah,
there we
this
go.
is much better. Yeah.
More like that.
That's great.
Hello, all. June 12th of 2016, the largest mass shooting to date occurred in this country in Orlando, Florida, at the Pulse nightclub. 49 people were killed and 53 were wounded. It is the second largest mass shooting in this country's history and the largest targeted for a specific population of people. That night I had been in Guerneville with all my fabulous sisters and we had bingo. And the next night was Sister Candied Apple's Novice Project. And a cabaret show was being done at Main Street Bistro. And like everybody else, I went to bed. And I woke up and saw the most horrific thing had occurred in our country. The sisters organized a candlelight vigil to follow that cabaret show. And I came back to town for that. And we walked from Main Street all the way down to Safeway and all the way back to the plaza. At the end of that vigil, Sister Wilma asked, why don't we have a pride flag here on this flagpole? And that broke my heart. Because I'm an old school river rat. I lived here when Rawls was here. I was here when the Hexagon House got burned down. So if you're old school, you know what I'm talking about. But I was 17 and 18 and I couldn't do anything about it. I'm not 17 or 18. I can do a lot. I am a straight white woman. And I will acknowledge to you that I use my privilege of being that to advocate on behalf of the LGBTQ community to have a permanent pride flag in a town that thrives off of the LGBT community. And I am so proud that that flag can show representation of acceptance, not tolerance, but acceptance. And inclusiveness, not exclusiveness. So on June 13 of 2017, with Linda Hopkins, the Russian River Sisters, and a large percentage of the population of the community, we raised the permanent pride flag for the first time. And that flag has flown for 7 years today, permanently.
All right.
I was actually looking on my phone because I know I still have photos. We had quite a crowd on that day. I also wanted to highlight something which is actually in the current issue of the Russian River Historical Society, in case anyone hasn't seen it. It actually talks about sort of gay history and culture in Lower Russian River going back 100 years. And these were photographs, you can read about it, that were passed down and passed down and passed down. And you can imagine that back in the day, those kind of photographs were very dangerous. But the fact that we actually get to see them and sort of see this history is pretty amazing. And then I also wanted to share the words from a friend of mine, and I'm sorry that I'm tearing it up. I'm like, I know. And this is, so Katrina Phillips, who is the current Human Rights Commission chair. She also actually works with our unsheltered population out here in Guerneville. She works for West County Community Services in the Vets building. And in the past few weeks has actually gotten to give some of her clients the good news that they have housing and are actually moving into permanent supportive housing in other places. She told me about one client who was so scared to move out of Guerneville because the housing that had opened up was in Santa Rosa. And that's actually where Katrina lives. And she's like, you know what? I'll be right across the 101 from you. And if you need to grab coffee, I'll be there. So I just want you to know the kind of level of care that Katrina really has for this community that West County Community Services delivers to their clients, which is one of the reasons they have one of the highest success rates. Anyway, this is what Katrina presented. These are her words, not mine, at the Board of Supervisors meeting when we honored Pride Month. She said, "The pride flag is seen as a rainbow and came to represent the spectrum and culture of homosexuality in 1978, known then as LGBT. The maker of the flag, Gilbert Baker, gave meaning to each color: red for life, orange for healing, yellow for sunlight, green for nature, blue for harmony, purple for spirit. To me, that sounds like existence and peace. As my friend Liz Feldman once said, it's very dear to me, the issue of gay marriage, or as I like to call it, marriage. You know, because I had lunch this afternoon, not gay lunch. I parked my car, I didn't gay park it. As soon as we realized I didn't have gay lunch and you didn't have a straight lunch, that we had lunch, we will all see that I don't have gay love and you don't have straight love. We have love. And trust me, the world needs a lot more love if we are going to survive as a species. So one of the reasons that I was so proud to work with Beth, and I want you to know that not only did it start in 2017, we then had to sort of redo it a couple of years ago when County Council or Sonoma County Public Infrastructure realized that this had never been formalized in their internal bureaucracy, even though it was a public statement and a commitment from the board. So it is actually official in multiple ways now. That to me, it really represents welcoming. It represents the fact that we are a community of love and that we accept, and not just accept, but welcome a wide diversity of people. And I also wanted to share, that tragically, trans youth have the highest rate of suicidal ideation and suicidality of any demographic. And we actually lost a trans teen in West County just a few years ago. And their mother actually continues to advocate and actually share rainbows sort of wherever she goes and has a whole foundation about it. But I always think that, if that flag saves one life, which is actually not an impossible thought, right? Someone sees that and says, I belong. I am celebrated here, I am welcomed here, I am loved here, then we will have absolutely done our job as a community and as a society. And that it's been run entirely by volunteerism, also, I will say. And not only Beth, but also, Kiri Sorensen, may he rest in peace, pulled it from the river a couple of times. It was a subject of hate crimes. The DA actually prosecuted that hate crime as a hate crime. So we have stood through that, and continue to fly the flag proudly. So I just wanted to present that, and say happy Pride Month, everyone. And hopefully.
Let's go to council first. Any comments or questions? I know I have. Anybody? I just want to say thank you, number one. Number two, like, to me as a gay man, the flag is not, it's not just a symbol of all those colors and all those things you say. It is this symbol of being just a person. I grew up not thinking I was supposed to be the way I am, and with the more of that kind of stuff that happens, the more we feel normal. I don't like that word, but the more we feel like we're just another person here, people accept who we are, we can get along with it, and we contribute. I mean, we contribute a lot to this community. This community is built on a lot of LGBTQ. Tourists that come here rely on that flag. If that flag ever goes away and there's some weird thing about it, that could be detrimental economically to us as well. I mean, it's got more meaning here than just how it started. The meaning keeps growing, and it's making a difference inside Guerneville to the Russian River, to Sonoma County, and hopefully spreads outward.
May I share another short story with you?
And I'll shut up.
No, that speaks to what you said, and this is part of why I stand for this flag today, still. With the theft of it that Linda brought up, and I was gonna leave the dirty laundry at home, but hey, we can wear it. In the middle of all of that, so I'm a property manager. So you talk about people getting housed and all of that, I have a diversity of it. Every time that flag got stolen, I was driving back from Santa Rosa to put another one up because I was determined that that flag was staying up. I had this young couple come to me to apply to rent an apartment. Turns out one was more openly gay than the other. And I didn't know until I asked them to fill out some forms to check references. He goes, "You're not gonna tell anybody that I'm moving in with my partner, are you?" Because they don't know. So this was 2019, 2020, 2018, and my heart is breaking that this child, because he's younger than my child, this 20-something child doesn't feel safe still to be open, to be honest, to be his authentic self. And I have an idiot who's stealing my pride flag. So I'm taking my broken heart and turning it into anger against somebody who I shall not name, who's stealing my pride flag. But it was reinforcing for me why I was still running out here every day to do it, because this poor child couldn't be open.
That's what it's all about.
He couldn't be open, and that's why when you teared up, it makes me tear up, and that's why I still stand for it, 100%, and I always will.
Thank you.
For all of you, so thank you.
Any other council member have a comment? Public, go ahead, here.
I was asked to speak a week or so ago on this subject. And I want to do a positive thing, but I want to tell you a story.
Yeah, can you?
I do want to tell you a story about the flagpole. That flagpole was donated by Guerneville Rotary many years ago. And those flags have been up since then. And don't get me wrong, I want to talk about the flags up there, okay? So don't take the heart. But before the flag went up, about 4 years before that, those flags were torn up. They were ragged. And I was working on a job and my client said, hey, what's going on with the flags in Durhamville? They're all torn up. And then I said, I don't know. I'm a good talker, I'll go find out. Okay, so I checked around and found out. And nobody had a key. Nobody had the responsibility of those flags in this town at that time. It was about 4 years. Okay, so the two men that I was working with, they said, if you replace those flags, I will buy them. I said, okay, I'll go find out. So nobody had a key to that flagpole. Okay, nobody had the responsibility to take care of those flags. So I took it on myself. I called the locksmith. And the locksmith said, okay, I'll come open that for you. I'll take care of these flags. Okay? He says, okay. So he came out, blah, blah, blah. We got it all set up. The two gentlemen that I knew said, here's your flags. They bought me flags for 3 years every year around July. Okay? Thank you very much. I will take care of this. Okay? And I was putting those flags down at the right time during the year when it was supposed to go to half-mast. Okay? A firefighter was killed in the line of duty, and they went to half-staff. Okay? A pride flag was up there. You have one flag that had the rules of one flagpole is you put those flags down and you take both flags down that are under the American flag. You raise the American flag up, you pull it back down to half-staff. I did that. And I'm not a thief. Okay, and I fought the fire out there at the opposite end of the house. And 24.
We're at time right now.
Oh,
You're at 2 minutes.
So you don't want to hear about
That,
it.
no, everyone gets 2 minutes.
I didn't know I got 2 minutes.
Well,
Why
I said
didn't
that,
you say you had 2 minutes?
I said that at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, anyway, okay. The long story short of this thing is that you have to take the flags down when you honor somebody that has died in the correct way. You take the pride flag off, you take the state flag off for the amount of time that is at half-staff.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
get your hand up first.
My name's Eric Gurn. The name implies town's named after my family.
Hey, guys, hey,
This is exactly what I deal with in my own community. I don't get any respect because I'm a little right of center. Don't label me. Okay, I was on the Hexagon fire, by the way. I knew Leonard Matlovich personally. How many of you can say that? Okay, before you label me as a hater, I was the best man at my friend's lesbian wedding. Okay? Before you label me further as a hater, Linda can attest to the fact that Bill and Wayne, who live next door to me, are dear friends. Wayne, and I'm opposed to the rainbow flag 24/7, 365 on the flagpole. The flag did not get lowered to half-staff Memorial Day because we have someone who lives in Santa Rosa who tends our flag. Now, I have volunteered to be the representative of the flagpole. I live 2 blocks from the flag, or I would request that it be turned back over to the Rotary. My issue is the rainbow flag does not belong on the flagpole 24/7, 365. I have no issue with the rainbow flag being on the flagpole currently for Pride Month. When Pride Month is over, take it down. When you have a bear weekend, raise it back up again. But what about other people? What about indigenous peoples? What about Cinco de Mayo? Okay, what about St. Patrick's Day? Are there other people, other groups? I mean, what we have going on here is it seems like a plurality of people who agree, but let me read something to you that I would say. If you took a poll of the members of this community, you're gonna find a large group that do not feel represented by the rainbow flag. I'm one of them. Okay, that's the symbol for the LGBTQ community, and that's fine. I respect that. You know, one of the things that my neighbors love about me, I thought we got 3 minutes. That's one of the things my neighbors love about me is I don't care what goes on their side of the fence. And I'm also the first guy to stand up to a bully. Nobody's gonna bully you or anyone in my presence. It's not gonna happen. But I feel bullied in my own community, as the comments attest. I can't tell you how many times, because I am right of center, that I'm told I'm not welcome here, that I should move. I'm sorry, but the rainbow flag does not represent everyone in this community, a far cry. And if you took a poll of people, and I talked to a lot of people who say the flag doesn't represent them. So that's what I would ask you to respect.
Okay, thank you.
Put the flag up during Pride, take it down when it's over.
Thank you. Mags, and we'll get to you next. Go ahead, Mags.
Those of you who don't know me, I'm Mags. I'm the president of the chamber. I personally made sure that the pride flag was hanging up and down Main Street during the month of Pride. I did not know that there was somebody that was attending the flagpole or not attending. I would love to work together as a chamber with putting somebody as a volunteer in charge of doing all of that. I don't mind if the pride flag has to hang halfway down. However, we need to vote on all of these things together. This doesn't really sound like a very solution-oriented conversation that we're having, and I am that person. I would love to have a conversation with one of y'all to be in charge of making the flags go down halfway, up when they're supposed to. I also want to let you know that a large part of this community, the economy, is based on LGBTQ IA2 plus vacationers, day trippers, whatever it is. It's why people come here. So as the representative, as businesses who are also mostly queer, I have to say that flag has to stay up all year round. Whichever way around it goes, I don't care. If somebody with the Irish flag wants to come on the 17th of March, go ahead. But I need somebody to show up to want to do that. Okay, so I invite you to come and talk with us. That's it.
Thanks, Mags. Yeah. Let's.
Sir, the flag does represent you. Let me explain why. Yeah. Almost 25 years ago, I arrived in Guerneville and ever since have sought to be present and engaged in the Russian River community. This evening, I stand before you to address the hanging of the pride flag year-round. What designed and created by a fellow sister of perpetual indulgence, Sister Chanel 2001 Gilbert Baker, as the symbol of the rich diversity of the LGBTQI plus community. The presence means so much more. The pride flag is a sign of allyship, war and allies. Advocacy, self-advocacy.
Please don't direct your comments to me.
Solidarity, my apologies.
Tolerance right there, please.
Solidarity, and most critically, safety.
Hey, hold on a second.
Yes, sir.
Everyone respect, please, what everyone is saying. And no personal attacks on people. We're here as a community to express our opinions, but let's keep it civil. Thanks.
Its presence tells others they are welcome, a feeling I knew the moment I first arrived in Guerneville. Now these same 25 years later, a symbol of welcome and safety is in jeopardy of being sequestered to a single month. What does this dynamic say about our culture and the long fought for struggle for progress, representation, and equality? Do we want to be a community that failed to reflect the rich diversity and supportive social values of the LGBTQI plus community? Allies and advocates, to ensure their voices are heard and the sense of well-being and safety not endangered. What I want to express is that one should feel welcome and safe 12 months of the year, and that the LGBTQI plus community, their allies and their advocates, want all entering our community to know these sentiments. I respectfully ask that the rainbow flag be flown, pride, solidarity, and safety year-round. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Well, is there no reason the pride flag can't have its own flagpole? That's
I think
my,
it does. Okay, thanks. Anyone else, public comment? Did you want to, anybody, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, this is quick, I just wanted to say what you were reading about, it's marriage, not gay marriage, was awesome.
Great. Anyone else? Public, how about online? Let's
I
go
don't
there
see
first.
any hands raised. If there's anybody in our online audience that would like to make public comment, please raise your hand. I see none. We did
Yep,
a few minutes ago have a comment from the interpreters that they couldn't hear, so.
okay,
let's be
Marcy,
mindful of that.
yeah, well, you can come, but come up close to the owl, please.
Okay, you can go now.
Marcy, no, come up close to the owl.
So sorry, but-
Talk to the
I
bird.
just wanted to provide a little bit more history on the rainbow flag. I was born in 1971 and I grew up on a carnival lot. Not a lot of people have that story. My dad put rainbow flags on every single one of our fun houses and mirror mazes, all through the 70s, all through the 80s. And I remember him telling me as a kid that all of a sudden it was adopted by this other community. And he, to this day, I mean, he passed away finally, but he hung those flags up, and to me, they just always meant happiness. And that's how I grew up thinking, it just meant fun and happiness. And I just, to me, when I see it as a straight, white woman, that's what I think of first, because it's always been there for me in my life. It's the rainbow flags.
Thanks, Marcy. Did you guys want to close?
And we do actually now have a hand raised.
Okay,
online.
let's go there.
Dan, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, well, thanks everyone. My name is Dan Sampson. I am the co-chair of Russian River Pride. And I just wanted to first say that I think it's wonderful that our community can come together and share our perspectives on this. I think it's very important to hear from everyone. Russian River Pride strongly supports having that flag up year round. I actually appreciate Thea's suggestion that maybe we have 2 additional poles, one for the state flag, one for Russian River, one for Pride or other flags. It's important to have that flag up because there are so many youth today who are struggling with their sexual orientation and identity. As Russian River Pride advocates for inclusion for all, including our straight allies, we also look to what we've been doing for the community. This last year, the 5 organizations that we provided grant money to were not gay organizations. They were a food bank, they were the Russian River Alliance, it was the library, it was the youth center. These are organizations that help our entire community come together, and that's what we really need to do, is we need to continue to lift each other up, and that includes our folks who need inclusion that are in the gay community. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else, Debbie, since then?
No, there are no more hands raised.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So, we'll start with Memorial Day. US Flag Code requires the flag is lowered to half staff at sunrise and raised at noon to full staff. That flag was lowered and raised. And I tell you, 9 out of 10 years in a row, that is the only flag in town that is in compliance. Not the Veterans Building, not the fire department, the plaza. I hold a signed contract with the county of Sonoma for maintaining and operating that flag in compliance with the US Flag Code. The United States Flag Code allows me to lower all 3 flags to half staff when ordered only by the US President or the Governor of the state of California. It does not mean that I do not have empathy, sympathy, or compassion for firefighters, for law enforcement, for other people of the community that are significant and have passed. But the order has not been issued. And we must adhere to the order of the flag under US flag. So myself, with the Russian River Sisters, we hold the contract and we handle the management of the flag. If those flags become torn, not looking nice, wrapping around the pole, we have several people that have flags in their vehicles that can change them on a moment's notice. We do. I don't have anybody telling me I need to change my flags. And I'll tell you all right now, there is a brand new set of flags ready to go the minute Jimmy Carter passes away, and they are lowered to half staff. He will be honored with a brand new set of flags, no matter the condition of the flags on that pole, because that man deserves it.
I'm an immigrant and I'm learning so much right now about how the flag works. I had no idea, and I didn't know that there was a contract in place for the county. This is awesome. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
Well, you know what, the thing of it is that there is that legacy on it, that if there's one flagpole, when you run it to half staff, you take the other flags off.
I will double check that to make sure that you are right or wrong, or that I am wrong.
Okay.
I will
So,
double
and
check that.
I agree with you that they come down in the morning and they go back up.
That's for Memorial Day only for that's how it is.
And the 4th of July and different holidays.
4th of July is not.
Anyway.
So can I hold this for a second?
But I'm just saying.
No,
I don't want to be.
No, I hear you, but I also hear, them saying that they will adhere to whatever the regulations are dictated by the state of California and the United States government and their county contract, so.
So I didn't know that they had a county contract.
Yeah. Okay, we do need to move on to the next.
Yeah,
item.
and I just wanna briefly say, to thank everyone for their comments and just say that, I obviously can't speak for the county as a whole or into the future, 365, and that I'm extremely grateful to Beth and the sisters for stewarding it. Because I think it's something that quite frankly, everybody should do. And I also, just knowing them, know that if someone approached them and said, we want, another sort of a flag to be flown on a particular day below that, I'm guessing that they would accommodate that as a, okay.
Under US flag.
Under US flag, but like you can't have anything else under it or.
The contract, no, you can't have 4 flags under
Okay,
US flag.
so it has to just be 3.
And it has to be, and then you only need the 3 that are stipulated in our contract.
Oh, because that's the county contract, so that's not the, but we could potentially amend the county contract if there was a desire to include sort of other groups at different times of the year.
We need some-
Perhaps a TIF request for additional flagpoles might be in order after we redesign the plaza.
Yeah. I would just say, I don't know that dueling flagpoles is the answer to the solution.
Yeah.
Because then you're going to have twice as much management. One thing that I do want to.
And twice as many arguments.
And twice, yeah, I mean, and so we have one flagpole that doesn't support pride, or that doesn't feel right to me. I feel like it's something that should be sort of flown loud and proud year round. But one other suggestion that I had, and again, this is just sort of spitballing, is that one thing I really love is that Sebastopol has all the flag sort of poles in the ground. And so it's actually a local Boy Scout, well, not Scouts of America now. It's because there's Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts in the Scouts, but they're the camping Scouts, not the cookie Scouts. Anyway. And they actually go out, Juneteenth, Memorial Day, Labor Day, 4th of July, and they put all of the flags out. And I also want to commend the chamber for distributing other flags and other sort of, paraphernalia. So that's another way to celebrate, is beyond the flagpole, looking at businesses and kind of creating a cohesive, decoration for downtown. And that would certainly be something that Tourism Impact Fund or Community Investment Fund could support. And then finally, I also want to share one other rainbow update, since we're on the rainbow theme, is that we have been working for quite some time, and we're hopeful that we will actually be getting a rainbow crosswalk in downtown. We'll continue to support the wonderful efforts of Russian River Arts to install rainbow murals, including in partnership with Thornville Elementary School, like the beautiful one that's, backed by the R3. So those are, just wanted to share that other update. And that's the other thing, with social media.
Well, it's not done.
It's not done. Okay, so okay, sure. We have the Bank of America building. We are in the vault, which echoes because it was literally where the money was stored, and the walls are super, super thick. So we had to put down baffling. And we were kind of deciding like, what is the best color? And then Jason from our office was like, we should do all of the colors. So we actually have the rainbow room in the Bank of America building, and that is permanently going to be installed as our county office space. I just want to mention that as well, that everyone will be welcome in the rainbow room, which is the Bank of America vault.
All right. Okay, great. We have to, thank you, everyone. We do have to move on. We do have no, we gotta move on because we've been on this forever.
What was the purpose
so-
of the discussion? And whose decision is it?
What's that?
Whose decision is it what flags fly?
It's the counties.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted.
Yeah.
But we appreciate the input of the Municipal Advisory Council. I want to share the information in celebration of Pride.
Okay, and so we have influence with that. So anyway, okay, ratification level of support to Senate Local Government Committee in regards to AB 817. We talked about this at the last meeting. It's in your packet. If all of you are okay with it, can I get a motion to?
Can I add something?
Oh, sure.
I put it in your notes. You're welcome to read it, but I wrote it. I'll read it out. It's a update on that legislation.
Okay,
So a letter was sent in support of AB 817. You all
yeah,
approved that in the past. It went in, the hearing has already happened. So AB 817 would address recruitment and retention issues in volunteer-run local advisory bodies by allowing more flexible remote meeting options. After being passed by the Assembly, the bill was presented in the Senate Local Government Committee on June 5th, where it failed to pass. However, the committee granted reconsideration, meaning that the bill may still be discussed and potentially revised for future consideration, but it probably would not be for another year.
right.
So you're ratifying a letter that has already been sent and didn't get the desired result.
And just so you know, Debbie, the members are incorrect on the.
On the
Old
letterhead.
letterhead.
Well, there's two letters there. There's the old letter and the new
It
letter.
says May 11th? Is that last?
That's
year?
last year's.
Okay, gotcha.
I included that because that was the basis for us being able to send this second letter in June.
So we don't have to do anything.
No.
This
You just
letter-
have to, it already went.
It already went.
Why are we
Yeah.
just have to prove?
I
Well,
did- for
I guess we have to ratify that we
Transparent.
made that decision and I'm sorry.
Well, we didn't make that decision, did we? We put it off from last one.
Know that we were gonna have the letter written in. So then things changed. So anyway, okay, we can move on.
But you still need to vote.
Oh, yeah, we still have to vote. Then we have a motion to approve ratifying the letter. Second, everyone, yes? Okay.
I say no,
Okay.
just because I don't think the order was correct.
That's fine. All right. Now we're gonna move on to, committee and, committee reports. Community engagement and outreach.
Yeah, so, you'll see in the notes, the final draft of the, communication and outreach plan. With the changes to section I, goals, which, under the letter E, establish outreach to underserved and underrepresented community members. We've all discussed this, sent around a draft. Herman wrote to me 15 minutes before the meeting with a lot of comments that I haven't had a chance to read. So I want to ask you, Herman, if you're okay with having an ongoing discussion about this. Let's ratify this and finalize it.
Yes, I am, especially when you had mentioned that the bylaws is updated every year.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, plaza infrastructure.
I think we need a vote on this.
Vote on adoption.
Oh, well, can we get someone to move to adopt?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Plaza. Who's gonna,
So the Plaza Committee, after hearing from the business community and doing a lot of outreach, generated a survey. We had over 200 responses. I think we might be up to at least 220 at this point. I put together a summary chart of what the responses were. As you can imagine, a lot of them were less about the physical space than they were about the environment. And so, probably 2/3 of people say they don't use the plaza, and the preponderance of reasons for that was the people who are there. They're feeling the lack of safety, unleashed dogs, drug use, etc. So we now have an actual poll that states those reasons. We also asked what people would like to see there and provided a menu of options for events. And I think all of them would be very welcome. Everything from food trucks to music and educational classes, kids stuff, all of that. There's a lot of enthusiasm about all of that. And a lot of commentary about more enforcement by the sheriff's department. So that's it in a nutshell. I felt that our job was to provide that, to garner that input and to provide it to D5, to provide it to Praxis, who I believe now is going to come up with some options for design and come back to the community for everything.
right? Thank you guys for doing all that work and getting the community input. Anyone have a comment or question about the plaza? Anyone in? Nobody out there? Nobody? Anyone online?
I don't see any hands raised. If anyone has a comment on the Greenville Plaza Community Input Survey results, please raise your hand. I see none.
Okay, and then the next two, we don't have reports, so I think that is all, folks, and the meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.